Hello and welcome to day 3 of Champ Camp. Today we'll be going over a strategy that you can use in your presentations for DECA competition, whether it be a role play or a written project presentation, to help you get your points across to a judge and make your presentation memorable. This strategy is known as tell them what you'll tell them, tell them what you've told them. And it basically means to use an introduction, body, and conclusion to emphasize and repeat your key points. By briefly introducing what you'll be talking about at the beginning, the judge knows what to expect and look out for during your presentation, in which you'll tell them all about your content and ideas that you've come up with. And then you'll remind them of what you talked about, so that it's still fresh in their heads. This repeats your main concepts multiple times, so that it sticks in your judge's head, and they remember what you talked about and can give you points on your rubric. Alright, so the first step is to tell them what you'll tell them. This basically means an introduction and overview at the beginning of your presentation. This will give your judge an idea of what you're going to be talking about so that they're able to recognize key points that you want to emphasize. Hearing that you'll explain something once may not be enough to make it stick. So by letting them know that you'll be talking about it, the point becomes more permanent and visible. This could sound something along the lines of, "Hello, my name is Person, and I'm the marketing director for ABC Telecommunications. Today, I'll be discussing how we can increase our market share by utilizing an aggressive national advertising campaign across multiple different platforms, targeting our target market of millennials. I chose these strategies with the consideration of dot dot dot." And then after that, you might want to mention some of the PIs or other parts of the prompt that specifically relate to your solution and what you're going to be talking about. Okay, next step, tell them, is just the bulk of your presentation, or everything in between the intro and conclusion. This should be the majority of your presentation time, and it's going to be where you fit all your content in, including your PIs and solution. You'll go into more detail here about these performance indicators and your choices and rationale. But you want to try to use some of the same phrases that you mentioned in the intro so that it clicks on the judge's head and they build that connection of, oh, I heard this here and I heard that there, so they can really, really remember it. There's not too much specific to talk about in this part since you're generally going to be doing this anyways, just covering all your bases, talking about your PIs, everything related to the situation. So we'll just move on to the next step now. Okay, the last step, which is tell them what you've told them, is essentially part of your conclusion. You want to briefly summarize the main points of your presentation. Again, to remind your judge. People, including judges, most clearly remember the beginning and end of a presentation, so make sure that you end strongly. Although, try to integrate the transition into the conclusion with the rest of your presentation. Don't just randomly add it in there with no context. So don't just like be going through your performance indicators and all of a sudden say, in conclusion, blah, blah, blah. You have to include the summary following the natural flow of your presentation. So basically, after you're done covering the body of your presentation, you can transition by saying, before we wrap this meeting, we'd like to briefly summarize what we discussed today. We decided to partner with this organization A for our local community charities to support. We chose this organization because of dot dot dot, and then you would briefly restate your decision-making process and incorporating the PIs, talking about how each of them, briefly talking about how each of them relate to your decision and the prompt. Um, and this isn't really part of this strategy, but there's a few more key points to talk about in your conclusion. You usually want to be able to end it strongly. You can mention that you'll be following up on this, like through an email. You'll be sending them some more details, or maybe you're going to schedule up a follow-up meeting. So just don't leave it hanging on a cliffhanger. You want to be able to close it properly so that it feels like the meeting really ended. All right, this wraps up today's episode of Champ Camp. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Stay tuned for tomorrow's episode with a panel of ICDC finalists. And especially make sure to come to Friday's live guest speaker from 3 to 4 p.m. regarding the economics of the apparel industry. We look forward to seeing you then.